trying to get the screen thing, the screen recorder. Let's see. Robert, you used this before, right?
Yeah. I have a
Oh, okay.
record
I see.
button.
It's the share button.
No, share's a different thing. Are you trying to share or record?
Oh no, I'm recording. But
Okay.
yeah, I'm just trying to get the.
Yeah, share the screen.
See.
That's share.
Oh, okay. Whiteboard. Okay. Cool. Can we see the whiteboard?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so Troy Rodo, can everybody see that?
Yep.
Cool.
Yep.
So, like, how familiar are you guys with Lojban? You know, like the letters and stuff?
I know the alphabet. I know most of the basics. As far as I'm concerned, like have learned up until the Lojban wave lessons part where you learn lonu keku, those terms. So I've learned that part up through that part, and I haven't learned past that basically.
I know all the letters and stuff, and I know a few words, but that's about it.
I know that shoy is hello. I know that much.
True. Well, just in case anybody needs to know the letters, I'll type them out. Abu ba sha da ebu fa ga ibu ja ka la mana obu pa rasata uva. Let's see, ha abu za, and there's actually, let's see, there's a few more. There's aha, there's, let's see, enpabu and slakabu, and that's just the apostrophe, the period, and the comma.
Oh, interesting. So I didn't know that the period and the comma were called denpabu and slakabu.
Yeah, denpa-bu, can you see when I highlight it?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, denpa is weight letter, denpa-bu is weight letter, slakabu is syllable letter. Yeah. So yeah, we just got, yeah, and then yeah, these are all the names of the rest of the letters. The consonants, you just add a Y for the names. Ba, sha, da. The vowels are abu, ebu, ibu, obu, ubu, abu, and those are all regular. You know, so it doesn't change as soon as you know it. You just know it. Yeah. So G is always ga. It's never like ja, like Jim.
Yeah.
C is like an SH sound. Sha. J
X was the hardest one for me to figure out.
Oh, C.
Like the X.
Oh, the X. Yeah. The X. The X is the hardest one for English speakers. If you're Scottish, it's actually in there. Like the.
Well, like I mean, I can pronounce the German CH because my mom learned German, so she's taught me a few German words. So like, I'm used to using the German CH. It's just that putting it in my head that X makes the sound is kind of weird.
Yeah, it is typically represented by like a CH in stuff like the Loch Ness Monster or the, let's see, the chess variant Raumschach, which is like space chess, like a 3D chess game. So yeah, this one is just, you got to kind of work at it. You know, most languages, pretty much any language you learn is going to have some kind of new sound to you. So
do you have any idea why they didn't just go with an H for the
I'm not sure about that. Well, I mean, personally,
capitalization of is a lowercase h, which is funny.
Well,
is it?
Yeah. So
does the apostrophe have a capital to it?
Yeah, the capital apostrophe is a lowercase h.
Really?
If you are typing things in all caps for some odd reason, then you put a lowercase h instead of the apostrophe.
That's weird. I never heard of that. Well, I mean, to me, the reason they put the apostrophe is like, you know, to me, it just looks nicer for the purposes of, you know, of Lojban, like uhi, you know, if you put like an H there, it's not really symmetrical. So I think it's more of just like a visual thing, and also to just kind of
Well, it's the purpose of the apostrophe is not specifically as an actual letter. Like, you don't make specifically to separate vowel sounds.
Yes, exactly. So it's for Lojban purposes, even though technically speaking, the apostrophe is that sound is a consonant. We just consider it like separate from that. And you can actually swap it with a comma, although nobody really does that. But yeah, the comma is just like the apostrophe would be uhi, like an H sound. The period would be like ui, like a stop in between. And then the comma would be like ui, like that. Whereas this would just be we, which means I'm happy. Yeah, so that's basically the letters then. Yeah, so past that, the simplest you can break up a Lojban sentence into, the simplest terms that you can use, I would say, would be selbri and sumti. So sumti are subjects and selbri are predicates. Like if I say mi klama do, this means I come or go to you. So me and do are the sumti, and klama is the selbri. And klama is a particularly long selbri. It's x1 comes or goes to x2 from x3 by route x4 by vehicle or travel means x5. And normally 5 is like the max you can go in Lojban. Yeah, and so basically you just place stuff in these variables, sort of like a math equation, right? Because Lojban is based on predicate logic instead of like propositional logic. So
what's the difference? What's the difference between predicate and propositional logic?
So predicate logic would be something, or propositional logic would be something like Socrates is a man. All men are mortal, therefore Socrates is mortal, right? It's something that, you know, it's spelled out in terms of like plain, you know, just plain language. So whereas predicate logic, I'm not extremely familiar with like all the terminology, but it would be something like, you know, Socrates equals man, and men are mortal, and then like therefore, you know, Socrates equals mortal, something like that.
It's laid out more like a math equation than a
yeah.
basically.
And so what Lojban does is it kind of takes this like math type of stuff, you know, and it makes it where you can talk like you would be. Because, right, like predicate logic, you can't really speak it, you know? Like, I mean, you could say P equals S or something like that, but it's not really practical. Whereas with Lojban, you've got basically predicate logic, the math stuff, but in like an actual sentence. And so the cool thing about that is that it's, that's why people say it's sort of like a bridge between human and computer communication, because computers can parse this through, right? Like if I say mi klama do, I go to you, and then I give the computer this information, and then I ask like ma klama do. So right, so ma is like it's asking what goes in this place, basically. So who or what goes to you, right? And then similarly, if I say mi klama do, and then I put mi modo, mo is asking like, what is the selbri? You know, what goes here? And if I've told the computer, you know, mi klama do, then, and I ask mi modo, it's going to be able to answer klama. And so, yeah. And so like a full, like to fill in all the places, you might say mi klama do from, let's see, I'm in Florida. we put an S at the end of names or some kind of consonant so that they're different from the other words, right? Because you'll notice all these Lojban words end in vowels, and so that's how we make names distinct.
So is that the only kinds of words that end in consonants are proper names, or?
Yeah, the only names that end in consonants are names, and that's just to make them distinct from the other words.
I never knew that. Like, I was wondering I was always wondering why people put S's after certain names.
Yeah, I'll explain that a little bit. So here's a full, like all the places filled up. Me, clama, do, I go to you, from, to, or sorry, I messed up here. I go to Florida from California by Route 66 by car. So it's me, clama, la Floridas, la Californias, li jaja, lo karsha. And so you see, like, normally we would have to have like something like I go to here from there, but in Lojban it's all just sort of embedded in the cellbreed, so you don't have to do that.
Yeah, you misspelled California.
I did I?
Spelled it with a C.
Well, it's on the other side of the ocean, so I did, didn't I? Yeah, la Californias. Yeah, hard to do it on the fly.
Yeah.
Why was there a dot after California's? Or whatever.
Well, technically, isn't it supposed to be a dot on either side of a name? Isn't it supposed to be a period on both sides?
Okay, so let me go into names. So shmena are names. So this is one of the three basic types of words in Lojban. Okay, so shmena. So the key thing about names is that they always end in a consonant. Okay, so that makes them distinguished from other words. Like if I say, violet in English, am I talking about the color violet or am I talking about someone named Violet? Right? Well, you don't have that problem in Lojban, right? Because if I were to say, let's see, what's a name? Let's see. Well, like my name, if I were to say this, like Wesley in and of itself would be a loan word. It would be like a borrowed word. It matches that pattern. So it could potentially mean something else, right? But if I add an S or some kind of consonant at the end, there's no way this could be, anything else. It couldn't be any other Lojban word because they all end in vowels. So this is how we make names distinct.
So why do you have it in one instance you had the period at the end of the name, and here you have it at the...
It's because my name begins in a vowel.
Oh, so if it begins in a vowel...
Any Lojban word that begins in a vowel, you have a dot before it. Yeah. So, so like la bob, I mean, you could stop, but you don't have to. You do have to stop at the end of all names, though. That's a thing, so that it doesn't run in. And like in between words, like... And the period is like, it's visually optional. It's always optional because anyone who knows like names names always have a dot at the end of them. They're going to know to pause, or like names or words beginning in vowels in Lojban always have a stop before them. Anyone who knows the rules, they can already figure it out for themselves, but it's just like a good visual kind of thing.
And the full stop. So like there should actually be a pause.
Yes.
You say La Wesley's Martin
Wilson.
Yeah.
So this is my full name, and it's got pauses in between the names as well, so that it doesn't run over. And so you can say, okay, here's one name, here's another, here's another. Yeah, and one other thing about names is this is a kind of weird part. You can't have la or doy in between them in the actual names. I mean, right? You couldn't have like Ella. You could have Elia or Elwa or Ella, Ellis, something like that. Similarly, you couldn't have doy. You could have joy. You could have doi, you know. But the reason we don't have la or doi is because these two are like the most common ways of introducing names. So like la Bob, Klama, le Zarshi, Bob goes to the market. This is like the standard way of kind of embedding a name into a place, like as a sumti, is la. And doi is just like, hey Bob, you know. Now we do also have choi, hello, shoho, goodbye. So shoho, Bob, choi, Bob. But these have to have a stop before them because shoi and shoho are they can be part of names, right? So like you could have a name like shois or shohos. And so the reason we prohibit la and doi is because they're the most common. And so it allows us to have like la Bob. You know, you don't have to stop before every single, every single name when you use la or doi. But you do when using shoi, shoho. Does that make sense? Okay. So Shmena, any questions? Anything else about names or anything? No? Okay. So Shmena are like that's one type of word in Lojban. There's three basic types. There's Shmena, there's Brivla, and there's let's see, Shmado. Right, so Shmena, they end in a consonant. We'll just stick to Brivla now. Shmena end in a consonant, and they don't have la or doi. That's basically what the rules for Shmena, and they always end in a pause. And so Brivla cover like a big part of Lojban. These are split into different subtypes, but basically, like Brivla are. The main thing about them is that they always have a consonant cluster. They always have at least two consonants touching each other. And this makes it distinct in comparison to like Shmavo. So the most basic type of Rivla is a gismu. And you can see the pattern like with Klama or Prenu or let's see, what's something else? Lojban. So here we can see the actual, the two types of gismu. These are root words in Lojban. These form kind of the backbone of it. But you see, sometimes the consonant cluster is right here at the start, and sometimes it's in the middle. And so basically you've got two different types of these root words. There's CC, VCV, or CV, CCV. So those are the two types you can get. And you'll notice they're always 5 letters. They always begin in a consonant. They always end in a vowel. And they always have a consonant cluster within the first 5 letters. That's a thing that all Brivla have. And so Gismu are basically, you know, they're root words. They express like a core concept, like Prenu is X1 is a person, you know, or we already went over like Klama. And they're basically like core words. They try to be, you know, as culturally neutral as possible with them. But the way, and they're basic, you know, they're basic core concepts. But if you want to get more specific, you can use Lujvo or tanru or Lujvo. Tanru are just like Lojbo Prenu, you know, like Lojbanic people, right? So you got Lojbo is, you know, X1 is Lojbanic in aspect X2. That's just the basic play structure for, you know, names. I mean, for these words for languages. We got Prenu is, you know, X1 is a person. So Lojbo Prenu is, you know, if I say Miho, we are Lojbo Prenu, I'm saying This goes to the X1 place of Prenu, because Lojban for tanru, which is what this is. Tanru is 2 or more gismu, 2 or more root words put together. It defaults to like the last place. However, it's modified. It's modified now. Like, we're not just people, we're Lojbanic people. But the cool thing is you can actually like attach stuff with tanru because you've got the full thing laid out. You can actually say like I wanted to attach something to like the X2 place of Lojban. I can use this word be, and it's sort of like a dash. Lojbo be lonu. I don't know. Lojbobao, which is the Lojban word for Lojban, Jbobao. So we are Lojbanic in the Lojbanic sense, people. We're Lojban people in the Lojbanic sense, right? So you got Belojbobao, that's attaching to the X2 place of Lojbo, and then Miho is attaching to the X1 place of Prenu. So this allows you to build like a lot more complex stuff with these tanru.
Can you put that back just for a second? Just explain that a little bit more, if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure. Was there something you were confused about?
Yeah, the be thing that you were talking about.
Let me see. Look, I'm terrible at thinking of examples. I'm trying to think of like a more, let's see. Yeah, okay, so I'll just put it back. Miho, Lojbo, Be, Lojbobao, Prenu. Let's see. Let me see here. I'm going to try to think of a better one to explain it. Me, me, Zarshi Klama, maybe Mizarshi. Hold on, let me look up the place structure for Zarshi right quick. That's a market. So X1 is a market selling X2 by participants X3. Okay, so if we wanted to say like what they're selling, right? We could say, let's see, me, Bello, Shija, I believe is the word for food. Shu, Klama. Shu is just kind of a separator. It separates like, you know, one, like a sumti from a selbri. It just indicates like, hey, there's this selbri coming up. It's not like food going, it's food and then back to Klama, back to the selbri again. So it's like, I market go, I go to the market or something like that. And then we've got here, Beloshija is attaching to Zarshi, right? Because Zarshi is, X1 is a market selling X2 to X3. So I'm saying right here, we're selling food, you know? So I'm going to the market where they sell food, basically, right? This be attaches it to Zarshi. So basically, with these tanru, you can make these compounds, and you can attach stuff. You can attach stuff to the earlier ones, right? If it doesn't have a be, it just attaches to klama, like me klama. But if you have a be in it, you can attach it to one of those modifiers, basically.
Ask something.
What's that?
If you have be, what comes after it is the X1 position of the word before it?
X2.
Well, yeah, the X2 of it. You could do befa, something like that, I think. Befa lo shija or befi. And in case you don't know, we'll go over this now. Fa, fe, fi, fo, fu. These jump to different positions on the selbri. Like mi klama, fu lo karsha. I go, by travel means car, right? I'm jumping to the 5th place of it. And you can also use these, I believe, with be to attach it to different stuff on the words, the left words. Right.
So what's the difference between mizarshi losijaku and mizarshi belosija?
Well, losija would attach to klama. I think.
Or what's shija? What's shija?
It's food.
Food. Okay.
So if I said mizarshi loshija, I believe the loshija would attach to klama. So it would be like I market go to the food or something like that. Right? This would attach to like I go to the food or something. It would attach to klama, the base of it. You use be to attach it to words along the way. And the interesting thing about Lojban is the tanru use a left grouping pattern. So if I said, I'll give you an example of how this left grouping works, basically. So in English, if I were to say, there is a pretty little girls' school, is that a pretty school for little girls, or is that a pretty little school for girls or something? Well, in Lojban, you don't really have that problem. If I said like melbi, cmalu, nixli, ckule, pretty little girls' school, right? What this is doing with left grouping is it's saying this is a pretty little singular or plural school.
Yeah.
So it's a pretty type of girls type of school. If I wanted to change that, like what does a pretty type of little mean? I could say ke. Okay, and that's like it's sort of like a parentheses in a way. It's like saying, let's see. It would be sort of like bracketing this whole thing together. A pretty type of little girls' school, if that makes sense. And then keha is also, it's like a right parentheses, basically, but it's you don't need to use it most of the time. It's unnecessary. So this is left grouping. The left word modifies the right one, and that whole thing modifies the one to its right. That whole thing modifies the one to its right. And so the base is always at the right, and then the modifiers are progressively to the left of it. But Lojban isn't just left grouping. There is some right grouping in it too, because there are some advantages to both left and right grouping. Primarily, it's a left grouping language. All the tanru, usually the lujvo, which is sort of like shortened tanru, those are left grouping. But with the attitudinals, the like emotional words, those are right grouping. So like I'm happy. That's just like an attitude. That's like saying, yay, I'm happy. Uinai, I'm sad. Uinairo'a, I'm sad in a social context. Uinairo'a.
Wouldn't you put a space between we and nai?
No, you don't actually have to with the shmavo. You could, but yeah. Let me just explain the shmavo for a second. So the shmavo are the third type of word in Lojban. So we already said the shmena and then consonants, that's basically their main thing that distinguishes them. The brivla have a consonant cluster tying them together. And then the shmavo, the main thing about them is they don't end in consonants and they don't have a consonant cluster. So the shmavo are like, they can be a vowel like e, which is a sentence separator. And since it begins in a vowel, there's implicitly a stop before it. They can be a single vowel. They can be a diphthong. So I'm happy. They can have something like that. They can have a consonant in front of them. Shoy is a shmavo. Shoho is a shmavo. So basically with shmavo, you may or may not have one consonant at the beginning, and then you may have one vowel or two, and then an apostrophe, one vowel or two, and then you can just keep attaching infinitely, so the space for cmalu is actually infinite. The space for ckule is not infinite, because ckule have to match a specific pattern. They have to be one of these, right? So there's a limited space. There's like a few thousand, maybe 10,000 or 20,000, depending on how that goes. And that's probably for the best, because ckule are harder to learn. But cmalu are actually infinite. And yeah, the main thing about cmalu is that they don't have a consonant cluster. They don't end in a consonant. They always end in a vowel. And the cool thing about cmalu is that the space is actually optional, because it actually doesn't make a difference whether I put it uinai or uinai. With other words that would actually make a difference.
Interesting.
The stress is important. Lojban words are always stressed on the penultimate syllable. So this is always ckule. That's always klama. If you the only time where Lojban words are not stressed on the second to last syllable is in names. Like if I said, la Jeremis, I can capitalize it on the third to last syllable, right? That's the only time capitals are used in Lojban, is in names. But yeah, so you don't have to have a space between we and nai or any cmalu compounds at all, actually, because it doesn't matter how you pronounce them. If I did want to say, like this would typically be pronounced uinairo'a, but if I wanted to say or let's say uinairo'a, or just any I could say uinairo'a or something, like it doesn't matter, because the stress here, there's no way for me to mess this up. There's no consonant clusters or anything in it. The main reason we have consonant clusters in the brevla, the ckule and stuff, is because it could break up into these cmalu clusters.
Gotcha.
So if I had, let's see, well, I don't want to get too far ahead of myself, but yeah, the consonant clusters are just so it doesn't break up, because you'll notice these never have consonant clusters in them.
Mm-hmm.
They always end in a vowel. They may or may not begin in a consonant, but it's only one of them. And so that's how the cmalu are distinct from the brevla. So yeah, the space is completely optional there. But yeah, so what I was saying before is about right grouping is the base is on the left in this case, which is this is happiness. And then you modify it to the right. So uinai, so like happy, negation, so sad, social, right? So this is saying, sad in a social way. Maybe you're lonely. So, and the cool thing is I can use these attitudinals, these emotion words, to modify the other words. So like a lonely or a socially sad type of pretty little girl school is what this says, right? So like, again, happy, negation, social. And this is modifying the previous word. So everything basically comes back to school here. This is sort of like the base of it all. But in the case of these tanru here, we're modifying, the left word is always modifying the one to the right of it. Whereas with here, you start on the left and then you go right. So in a sense, Lojban is, people call it a left grouping language, but it's actually kind of a hybrid. The tanru, the main stuff here is left grouping, but the attitudinals are actually right grouping. And so you can see this provides you an advantage because you can actually modify it in both directions here. And these attitudinals are just fun. They're just very fun to talk about.
How hard is it? Because there's a lot of kind of sort of logical rule. I mean, it's that's the whole point, I guess, is that it's all very logical. But I'm wondering, it's sort of the rules. It's you know, they don't seem intuitive based on the way at least English works to me, and so I take it that it is so that after a time you do start to intuit these rules. You don't have to. There's a way for it to be natural based on human psychology.
I'm not sure about that.
Yeah, well, I know that the reason it was created is to change the way people's brains work. The people who learn it claim to think more logically. It's designed to do that to you, to make you think more logic-based versus emotions-based.
Well, not necessarily more logic versus emotion. I mean, we just saw like the emotions right there. You know, it has a very complex system for expressing emotions, but I think it's okay. So originally, Lojban was designed to test the Sapir-Whorf hypothesis, which is that language influences or controls how you think. And so a language that allows you to make more nuances and expressions, they could allow you to think in a broader sense. That's how I would describe it. I know it's called like the logical language, but it's not necessarily that you have to think logically. Like, I mean, you could express perfectly illogical things in Lojban, but I think you do become like learning any second language broadens your horizons. But I think especially Lojban, because it's designed logically and it's designed to where it gives the user a lot more control over how they speak. I think that would particularly broaden your horizons. So I think if there's any influence over your mind, I think that would definitely be it, is getting to think more outside the box.
I found that like as I learned more of Lojban, it became easier to learn more of Lojban. Now, whenever new concepts were introduced with the Lojban wave lessons, it was difficult for me to grasp them, but once I grasped them, it became easier to grasp new ideas. So
It's one of the things that struck me with the Lojban wave lessons when I was trying to go through them is that there weren't enough examples. Like, you know, there'd be sort of like one example of it, and then it was hard for me to, like, it would have been good to have like practice that, like introduce, okay, here's a bunch of what would you call them, celebrity, yeah, a bunch of celebrity that are part of our vocabulary for this lesson. Now we're going to apply those celebrity to these concepts, you know, as opposed to just having like a one or two.
Yeah.
I don't know. I was able to figure out through those examples they gave me, like pretty much every single time I was able to figure out like how to use them in regular speech. Like I like to say in terms of like say something like, I'm happy that you love me, imigleki lonu domi prami keku. So like, and that's not something that was put in the lessons. So like I've found like different ways to figure out how to use these different lessons in my everyday speech with people that I talk to.
Yeah, I mainly, like, the things that helped me were Lojban for beginners and skimming through different parts of the CLL. The CLL is really good about having, like, here's the Lojban text, here's a literal translation, and here's like more, you know, just kind of understandable version of it.
CLL is the
Complete
reference grammar kind of thing, or whatever.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Yeah, the complete Lojban language.
Okay.
Big read.
It's a book, yeah. It's a huge book.
Yeah, going to different parts of it here and there is pretty cool. Like if you look up a word on Vlasiscu, the Lojban dictionary, a lot of times it'll have, like, for the cmalu and stuff, a lot of times it'll have like a little link to the CLL for that section. And that's been very useful for me. Like, how does this word work? Oh, here's the CLL.
Really, because I use I don't use that one. I use
Jbovlasta.
Jbovlasta. Yeah.
Yeah, so Jbovlasta is sort of like a wiki. Anyone can add words to it and they can vote on them. And then periodically those will go into sort of a more official dictionary, which is Vlasisku.lojban.org.
I'd like that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a kind of democratic language, isn't it? It's pretty cool.
Yeah. So what's the link so I can get it in? So I can
Vlasisku.lojban.org. Yeah, it's I find it a little bit more user friendly than Jbovlasta. Jbovlasta is for kind of different purposes.
Yeah, I see that. Yeah. So I've been here. Just when I'm trying to do translations, that's generally how I learn new words, is by doing translations of English words into Lojban. So that it's definitely, for the purposes that I use it for, it's definitely easier for me to use Jbovlasta.
How many languages do you speak? Mledlk. How do you say your name? Medelk.
Oh, that's just,
Right in Lojban, we'd know.
that's this is just a username. This isn't my real name. This is a username that I generally use. It stands for Maryland Elk, basically. So you can just call me Monica if you want.
Monica.
Is there a way to change that?
Okay.
I don't know. But so the thing is, right now I only speak English. Right now I only speak English, but I'm learning kind of simultaneously Spanish and Lojban. Spanish from my boyfriend who lives in Puerto Rico, and Lojban from the wave lessons and other things that I can find online.
I took a Spanish class while I was learning Lojban, and I did a video conference with the teacher, and instead of saying el libro, I said la shukta, the book. Yeah. Like, I don't know what a shukta is. Weird thing was I used la, because that would be the feminine thing in Spanish, but in Lojban, la shukta would be the thing named book. Yeah.
How about you, Wesley? How many languages do you speak?
Just English.
Just English. Same here. Okay, good. Well, I speak English, and I have tried to learn a little bit of Spanish and French, but I don't know really either of them at all.
Yeah, I never did pick up on Spanish. I took, like, a couple classes in high school, a couple classes in college. I still didn't speak it well at all. But yeah, so I think you're right. The thing about Lojban is that it's different from natural languages. It is very different, but I think it's simpler once you get the hang of it, because everything kind of draws back. Like, there are all these crazy cmalu and stuff that modify the words and all, but really it all just draws back to, like, there's a celery there, and there are sumti attached to it. There's a predicate, there are subjects that attach to the predicate.
Like, once you learn all of the grammar rules for Lojban, you can make pretty much any sentence with those grammar rules. Like, there's no, unlike in English where, like, spelling can be really anything because we borrow so many words from other languages. Lojban, like, every vowel, every letter makes a sound, every combination, some combinations of letters make a certain sound, but they don't make any other sound than that, is the thing.
It's isomorphic. It's completely isomorphic.
Yeah.
And that's really, really cool, because you don't have to make a mistake with spelling. You don't have to make a mistake with pronunciation. It's just basically one letter, one sound. Sometimes there is a gamut, okay? So, like with R, this can be pronounced ra. It can also be pronounced r, like, the Spanish double R. Yeah. Okay, it can be pronounced like that. But it doesn't make a difference to, like, the meaning of the word if you roll your R or not,
Yeah, apparently, like, it was originally you were supposed to roll your R's, as far as I know. Like, when the Lojban was originally created, you were supposed to roll them, but in the community, people don't really care if you roll your R's much.
The CLL says, I'm pretty sure the CLL says you can roll them or not. Yeah, but, like, I can picture that because there are some cultures like in the East where they don't make a distinction between R and L, and so that's probably where that came from.
Yeah, I can see that.
Well, yeah.
Well,
Did you have a question?
Well, I was just going to say, so like as far as being able to figure it out, it's sort of like I could imagine, you know, like because of the regularity of all the rules and everything, if I was looking at it on the page and I was trying to translate through writing, you know, I could sort of figure it out, obviously, because it's logical. But if I was speaking it, I just have this feeling like, okay, so I've gotten to the end of this whole thing, and now there's something that is left off, and I know that because it's a consonant that means that it didn't need to have this thing, and so I can start, you know, back tracing until I, you know, come up with the meaning. And I'm just trying to think about like
that it's harder in speech than it is in writing because you can't plan it out.
I'm not sure because I can't do either, but that's what occurs to me as I'm wondering.
Well, really cool words in Lojban are si, sa, and su. Okay, so si it means backspace previous word. Okay, and you can say multiple C's. Like if I were to say Miklama lezarshi si, this would become me, right? And then there's sa, which is backspace until next word I say. So like Miklama lezarshi sa Miklama lomizdani. I go to the market. Oops, I mean I go to my house, right? So this is backspacing to me, and then you can continue on after that. Or actually, what you could do is you could say sa klama lo mizdani. You wouldn't have to say like me over again, right? So it's just backspacing to the next word you say. Wherever the previous iteration of that word is, that's where it backspaces to. And then su, it backspaces everything, basically. Everything since you last started speaking or writing. So like Miklama lezarshi su is nothing. It just erases everything. And so these are really cool words because you can, if you make a mistake in speech, you can go back and correct it. Kind of like, and you can do this in writing as well, but it's particularly useful for speech because you can say like, oh, I messed up that word, cc, you know. They're like in English,
So
we might
basically
say,
never mind the previous things I said.
Yeah, but you can do it with a lot more specificity. Like in English, we might say, you know, like to kind of erase, but it's kind of vague, you know. With seesaw and su, you can actually like backspace to specific points. I can imagine that being used for like a voice to text program really well. If you're like editing something with voice recognition on your computer, that would be like extremely useful. Yeah. So is there anything anybody's interested in particular?
There was one thing that I was learning about in the wave lessons that was a little bit difficult for me to grasp. Noi. So Oi kuho and Noi kuho. Those were like
kuho. Wait a second, let me see.
Yeah.
I'm not
So
sure about
poi and then whatever kuho and noi whatever kuho.
Those kuho ends noi, right? So
yeah.
Okay, so yeah, so
and
kuho's
well.
Yeah, so yeah, noi is like this is loosely associated with this thing, and then poi is this is specifically pertaining to this thing. I'm actually not. I actually never did really get those down myself, but that's what I know is that like poi is like you're extrapolating on something in a specific way, and noi is like, oh, this is just incidentally referred to it.
Yeah, and that's the kind of thing I was talking about, like with the examples, where like if there, because I was having similar trouble. It's like if you had examples, multiple examples of like how that would be in English.
Yeah, the when I got to lesson 7, Noi, it kind of like I kind of got stuck. It's really confusing, to be honest.
I haven't really taken the wave lessons. I just recommend like Lojban for beginners and the CLL once you've gotten more advanced. But yeah, that's what I know is like Poi and Noi are similar. They're for like extrapolating on, I think, Sumti, and you can kind of like get like a whole breedy or something extrapolating on them. Another thing you can do is like you can do Lonu, and this embeds a like basically a whole breedy, which is a Selbri-Sumti relationship. It embeds basically a whole sentence into a Sumti, like Lonu the Prami Lonu. Yeah, so, and then you can use K to terminate it, which you don't always have to. So,
wasn't it K-ku?
no, ku is to terminate. That's to.
Well, the originally like it would be low, at least as it's taught in the latest lessons, it's low space nu and then K space ku.
Is it? Okay. Yeah. Okay. So, well, okay.
In the wave lessons.
Nu is terminated by K, and lo is terminated by ku. That's what I know.
Yeah. And the thing is, like, lo ku turns a Selbri into a Sumti, I believe. Or is it?
Yeah.
And nu K turns a breedy into a Selbri. So you put lo and then you put nu, and that basically tells you that you're turning a Selbri into, you're turning a breedy into a Sumti, basically. And so you have to end it with both K and ku to make it like that.
Well,
an event of
yeah, the way that I think about it is sort of like let me see. Midunda, I give lo I give a cat lo mi pendo. I gave a cat to my friend. Okay, so like lo mlatu is taking the X1 part of cat. X1 is a cat of species or breed X2. So this is taking X1 from the cat. If you wanted to take X2, you could put se. X3, even though mlatu doesn't have it, is te. And then ve is X4. He is X5. They're swapping. And then mipendo is taking.
I guess since you're using the version where you don't end lo with ku, I can understand where you're ending it with just K.
Well, I mean, it depends. You know, sometimes they're optional. It depends. But yeah, but see, midunda lonu. Let's see, mi prami lo mi mlatu. Let's see. I give the event of me loving my cat K lo mi pendo. So let me check this in Zhboski. Can you guys see my screen here?
You didn't put an I after the KE.
Oh, did I?
Yeah, it's not K, it's K.
Sorry.
Just making sure that you get it right, you know.
Yeah, can you guys see my screen share here?
I can't. The only thing I can see is the whiteboard.
Okay, so hold on a second. Let's see. I will share my screen if I can figure it out.
So is the whiteboard that you're using a part of the app, or is it a part of the?
Yeah, it's a part of the app. I do not know. Let's see, are you still seeing the whiteboard?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
You maybe have to drop out of the whiteboard part, and then you can go and share the screen instead.
Share. Okay, so this is what I've entered here. Okay, so this is the sentence. So
Where did you end up?
this is in Zboski. So this is a parser. This shows you the kind of internal structure of it. And so you've got me, the dunda, the givers. So this is dunda one. You got dunda, the giving. This is the selbri. You got lo nu. So the event of me loving my cat. This is all in the, and then you see K is like terminating it. So, and you can see the number here actually 4. This is leading back to lo. So yeah, it appears that like nu and K are the ones that you need. Ku is more like, I don't know, ku, you don't have to use that too often. In fact, most of the time we just use shu. And so let me see if I can figure out how to stop the screen share. Let's see, whiteboard. Okay, you're seeing the whiteboard now?
Yep.
Yeah, so Zboski is really cool. Lojban.org/Zboski. And that just lets you like, kind of, I can't get the text here. Okay, wait.
And you can use the chat to put URLs or something.
Yeah, if I could figure out how to work the chat. This is like my first time using this program. But yeah, Lojban.org/Zboski. It's a parser. It's pretty cool. And the thing you'll notice about Zboski and a lot of these like Lojban translators, the cool thing is since Lojban has an unambiguous grammar, it's like if you type it correctly, it's always going to give you like a perfect translation. You know, like you use Google Translate to translate like English to Spanish or Spanish to English or something, like any natural language that you're starting in. It just doesn't really understand it. Like it can work okay for simple stuff, but it's just, ooh, man, you try to use it for anything complex and it shows its flaws. But with Lojban, like if you're sticking to the letter of the grammar, you know, if you're just sticking to the letter of the law and you've typed it perfectly, it's always going to give you the same translation. And it can, like I was saying before, like it can actually tell you like, oh, okay, me is the giver, you know, this lonu K thing, this whole embedded sentence is the gift, and then here's the receiver of the gift. And so it actually has not only, it's not even that it's just mapping it from like Lojban to English or whatever. It actually has kind of an understanding of like the underlying structure behind what's going on in that sentence. And I find that me as a human being, I have a much better understanding of the underlying structure. Like I can look at a sentence in Lojban, and I'm not fluent yet, but I can tell you, you know, exactly the structure of this. I can tell you, you know, like me is x1, t is x2, 3 is do is 3. You know, like the giver, the gift, the receiver. I can tell you this is all leading back to dunda. So it's pretty cool. And another cool thing is like the fact that all the words are identifiable. So like even if you didn't know that dunda means gift, you could still understand, okay, this is a gismu, and this is being used as a selbri in this instance, you know, because of the patterns of it. Not only the patterns of the letters, but also the patterns of the sounds. You get stuff like that's why we have stops at the end of names and stuff. But usually you don't have to have stops. Usually it's just Lojban can take a seamless stream of sounds, but the way it's structured with the consonant clusters and all that, you can resolve it back to a set of individual words. Has anybody heard of the cmalu? Okay, the cmalu is when you're making lujvo. So lujvo are Lojbo are like tanru. They're compound words, but they're shortened. So like instead of saying Lojbo prenu, I could shorten Lojbo to jbo and prenu to pre. These are assignments. Unfortunately, there's no way to get these little 3-letter shortenings. Just like there's no way to there's no rule for memorizing them. You just have to go through and memorize them individually, unfortunately. But
there are specific sort of shortened versions of each of them that you would use for Lojbo.
Okay, so like specific version, like what's that?
Sorry, I have to go. I have to work now.
Oh, okay.
Thank you very much. It was very interesting.
Good having you. Yes, specific ones. Yeah, sometimes you can do different ones. Generally, like these form here, the CCV, those are the best because they have a consonant cluster, so they don't break apart, and they end in a vowel. And these are called ROFC. These little shortenings, these are ROFC, and these are used for making Lojbo, which are shortened compound words that you lose the ability to attach, like here I could attach be to Lojbo. You lose that ability with jbopre, but it's shortened and, so it's got brevity to it, and you can, you can do you can make place structures specifically from the individual words. Let me see. Okay, so this is the specific place structure for jbopre here. So L1 equals P1, it's L1 Lojbo equals P1 prenu, right? So Lojbo is, X1 is Lojbonic in sense X2, and prenu is X1 is a person. So jbopre, a Lojban person, is L1 equals P1. So both of these, X1 is Lojbonic, X1 is a person, L1 equals P1. In aspect L2, so that's the 2 place of Lojbo. So that's the aspect part of it. And so the cool thing about these Lojbo is you can make these specific place structures to the Lojbo, and you can actually assign them. And in Jbovlasta, you do a special sort of code, like when you're entering, you put these $signs around it, and that actually tells like a future parser or whatever, like what it belongs to, basically. And so that's pretty cool. Yeah, and so the types of ROFC that we have are CCV, best one, consonant cluster, vowel ending. CCV, you've got CVC. The problem with that is it ends in a consonant, so it can't come at the end of a Lojbo. You'd have to use the full gismu, the full 5-letter form. There's CVV, and there's CV apostrophe V. Those are the types of ROFC. The problem with these CVV ones is you can like they don't have any consonant clusters between them. And you'll notice these actually match the pattern of Shmavo, right? These alone would actually be Shmavo. That's part of why ROFC can't be used in isolation. And so you've got to have some kind of consonant cluster to attach them. So if I have CVV, CVV, or CV apostrophe V, that creates a problem because this is just a Shmavo cluster. Like that could be, by bow or something along those lines, and that would be like a 2-part Shmavo cluster. So what we do here is we put an R right there to attach it, unless the next letter is an R, because you can't have double consonants in Lojban. In that case, we put an N, and so that stops it from breaking up.
Actual R and actual N, or is the R and N standing for?
No, there are actual R's and N's. So like if I had, by bow, let's say, whatever that means, put an R there. Or if I had by rao, then I would put an N, bine rao. And that stops it because by rao is tu shmavo. Bine rao is a lujvo. It's like one thing. It sticks together. That's the whole point of consonant clusters, is they allow the words to stick together. And so the cmalu test is a little, it's kind of interesting. It's when you're creating a lujvo, and it looks okay, right? This looks like a passable lujvo. This is a nonsensical word, by the way, but it's used to illustrate the point, right? So we got tos, that's a 3-letter, that's a CVC, rafsi. And then you got mabru, that's a 5-letter gismu. So this looks like a good lujvo, okay? But the problem is, in speech, when you're pronouncing it, it can easily break up into to, smabru. So this is a shmavo, means left parentheses. Toy means right parentheses. Smabru is CCV, CCV, so that's a lujvo itself. So what do we do here? Well, we actually just add a Y, tosamabru. So this is a lujvo, right? This breaks up into tosmabru. So tosmabru is left parentheses smabru, whereas tosamabru is the actual lujvo. So you can see we add Y dashes sometimes to make the words stick together. So you can have a Y dash, you can have consonant dash. Also, if you get like, say, something like this, where there's a double consonant or something, or consonants that don't work together, a Y is also used in that instance to kind of buffer from one vowel to the other. Bob. Yes.
Just reading that in my head was funny.
Yeah. There's a similar test. Does anybody have questions about that? Okay, so there's a similar test called the Slinkuhi test. So this is for fuhivla. So fuhivla are these they're borrowed words or loan words. Okay, so like you can have a certain type of fuhivla that is delimited by this, like shijer, spaghetti. Very weird looking words, I know. Okay, but this is an R dash that's being used. Shij comes from shija, that's food. Okay, this is limiting the term spaghetti to food. Like if somebody had, another word, like, well, in my language, spaghetti means to go. So you could do klammer spaghetti, right? So that way you can have multiple ones. But you can also have ones just like this, for instance. I'm not sure if that's permissible. Fuhivla are very difficult to create. They require running a lot of tests, these shortened fuhivla. So, but they're cool because, with the gismu, you've got these root words, these core concepts that are being used, right? And then with lujvo, you're compounding them. But how do you get like a compound for spaghetti, right? You like, what is it, like Italian saucy noodly food? Like, it's not really, it seems like a much more culturally based concept. But Lojban's supposed to be, a culturally neutral language as much as possible. So they have like this extra word class that's specifically for borrowed cultural concepts. And they're called fuhivla. So fuhivla, copy word. And the Slinkuhi test is something where it's basically like the cmalu test. It's where, like, Slinkuhi in and of itself looks like a good fuhivla. It doesn't match the pattern. The main thing about fuhivla is they can't match the pattern of any of the other words, basically. So it's not a gismu, it's not a lujvo, it's not a shmavo. Okay, but watch what happens when I put lo in front of it. So los, lin, kuhi. It breaks it. actually doesn't break up. It merges together to form a Lojban. There's like 3, 3, and then 3, ignoring the apostrophe. So what we can do here is we can add an R or something to that extent, a consonant dash, and then, that would prevent us from getting, from that problem. Slinkuhi, by the way, is supposed to be a fuhivla for slinky, but it's slirnkuhi, or I think slinkui or something, slinkuhi, bunch of different ways to do that. So yeah, the tosmabru is for the compound words, slinkuhi is for the borrowed words, but it's just basically like little sort of tests you've got to run to make sure it doesn't break up or merge into some other kind of words. So yeah, any other topics you wanted to cover?
Pretty much everything that I was thinking about has been covered in some way, pretty much.
Okay. I hope I wasn't too confusing then.
No,
Actually, you gave me a few new websites, and one of the websites actually has links to texts in Lojban that I'm definitely gonna have to check out. So
there's no English to Lojban translator.
No,
well, there's the Jbovlasta, which will translate singular words.
Yeah, singular words. I think there might be. I would look on the just lojban.org. I think there's something like that on there. It's not the best, because when you're starting in English or any natural language and going to Lojban, it's not the same because the computer doesn't understand it. But I think there might be one, sort of a work in progress on the Lojban website.
I just wonder, it'd be interesting to see, I just wonder if it would be, once there's a large enough corpus of translated works from different languages, since it's sort of unambiguous, then it would be, you would think that you could start using that for like machine translation of things,
Yeah. Oh yeah. Definitely. I mean, I think James Cook Brown proposed that the original Lojban, which is Loglan, the idea that you could say that you're like the United Nations, or say that you're like the owner of a website, you want to translate it into like a dozen different languages. You could, in the future, you could just translate it into Lojban, hire one team instead of 12, and the computer could output it into all these different languages, just in an instant. And then the only thing you'd have to pay for is just like localization to clean it up a bit, but that's just something they typically do anyway, is the localization after the direct translation. So, but like that could actually save you a bunch of money. But like the people reading the website in, all these languages wouldn't even have to know of Lojban's existence. So that's actually a pretty practical usage for Lojban, would be machine translation. So yeah. Well, if that's it, I will bid you farewell.
Thanks.
Yeah, thanks. I'm definitely going to check out these a few different writings that are in Lojban and see if I can use the Lojban, the English translator, to learn some new words and some new ways of saying things.
Yeah, I would definitely use Boski if you're like, oh, does this work? I've typed this thing out. Is it actually grammatical? Because it'll tell you the exact spot if you mess something up. It'll like, there's an error at line so-and-so, word so-and-so. And so, yeah, I've used that a lot to figure out a lot of the intricacies of the grammar. So yeah, well, it was very enjoyable. I've never even really seen a video conferencing thing like this for Lojban. I think we started something big here, and so I have to thank you for all stopping by. So Kiha.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, Shoho Rodo.